So I think without further ado, I will invite the speakers to present their various views on the digitalization of the economies in Asia in general. We have six speakers today. If the speakers could keep their presentations to around 8 minutes, that would be nice, so that at the end of the day, we could have a series of questions and answer. So the first speaker will be my very good friend, Mr. Peng, who is the founder of Silverlake Group, which is the group is a multi-million-dollar organization of key offices around the globe, and with some of the member companies listed on various stock exchanges. So, Mr. Goh, please.
Good afternoon. I will try to share some charts to make it easier. Can you all see the chart?
Yes.
Okay, I'll make it full screen. So now I've been talking about digitization. In fact, I have been working on digitization since when I was in university on the simulation of chips. What happened is when we were trying to build a very large scale integrated circuit, actually, we only think of mathematics. We actually don't really care about the real physical things. So the simulation of chips are actually very mathematical. That was 1978 when I was working on it, and it moves on. And so what you mean by mathematics? You know, we always have this conception that mathematics is about calculus, algebra. No, actually the real mathematics is symmetry, cohomology, and maybe in the most traditional area is the Fourier transform, which is most likely these are the three most important mathematics, while the other mathematics leads to this mathematics. Now then from there, you actually goes to real and abstract structures, and that is very large integrated circuit. And of course, those were the opportunities, but it was not so obvious in 1972. It was not registered in USA GDP in 1972. So very large integrated circuit was never registered in USA GDP, which is a joke, right? And so it shows that the opportunities and the risk were well hidden. Now, but if you translate those abstract and the real structures into everyday life, we call it supply side, demand side, fund side, and maybe AI. Now, it is very important to be very careful about all these words like AI, blockchain, you know, big data, when the purposes are not clear, which means the abstract structures are not clear, the real structures are not clear, but the words are just words. And actually, we really cannot achieve much. So our education and experience until today are very biased towards supply side and real structures. And of course, that presents a big risk. And at the same time, of course, opportunity. I'll move on to the second chart. Now, the digitization actually widened the risk and opportunity gaps. And so that is very fundamental to the concept of money. Now, what is money is actually about risk and opportunity. That is the reason why you have interest, because you lend out money, you take certain risk, you expect a return. But unfortunately, this digitization actually widened the risk and opportunity gaps. So the theory of money, as per traditional sense, is not working as well. That's why leading to the negative interest rate. And maybe common sense actually works better, which is basically investment and return concept. Now, actually, shockingly, that was the Islamic concept. Now, the other problem about digitization, which is a mathematical world, which it says the same is not the same, because in the world of mathematics, everything is similar. So that is actually another trap, that the same is not the same. While we thought we are the same, actually we are not the same. And so again, common sense may apply better, which is called better. Now, and everything is possible in digital world, another big trap. And this is an connective trap where you can't really see. And so unknowingly or carelessly move on to north while you want to go to Singapore is a big economic cost. Now, the best in the class is no more good enough. So if you say I'm the best in making cars, sorry, tomorrow it may be just all electric cars. And things are changing so fast that the best in the class is no more maybe good enough. Now that presents the key risk. But whatever it is, the most important thing is about visibility. If you can see, then the risk is minimal. So look before you leap. But if you can't see, no matter how you look, you are still taking a lot of risk. Now, so if you want to see, of course, these are all the possible books behind. And of course, that leads to a very so-called uncertainty complex, volatile and anxiety-filled world. And is basically called complexity phenomenon. Now, that is another risk. But if you look at mathematics, actually, it's shockingly simple. The structures are actually shockingly simple. Now, so that's the reason why I said we have to look at mathematics irrespective of whether we understand, we don't understand, at least we respect that sciences and the evolution of digitization is based on mathematics. It's just like economy is based on invisible hand. And ignoring invisible hand in mathematics is definitely a big error. But mathematics doesn't deal with human being, and human being has this saying. Harvard Business School used to publish this book by Mark McCormack, that people buy from people they like and do what they like. Now, but if you translate these mathematical pictures into really a visible picture, then the connective structure is not as complex as what we think. That is basically on the ecosystem that is based on invisible hand and evolution, trust, rules and regulations, purposes, shared values, and coverage. Now, these are called bases in mathematics and science. Now, without bases, things don't go forward. Now, you can have temporary these be successful, but it will never be long term. So the important thing is to have basis to whatever we do, and that will be the biggest insurance against risk and opportunity. Now, of course, then the next thing is about behavior, good habits, right? That is what Aristotle said, that excellence is a habit, it's not just an action. Now, but behaviors, there are two types. One is called transitional, the other one is called extensional. This is a bit tough, but they are subject of symmetry. I mean, those who are interested can actually key in those words. You may be able to find them in Google. Now, when we move on and classify all the areas of attacks, now, shared belief or shared purposes are very important because all nations are based on that concept. Now, this is the highest concept for human beings to form collectives. So nations are based on shared beliefs. You can call it race, you can call it anything, you can call it freedom, whatever it is, it's called shared beliefs and shared purposes at work. Now, but this is equally important to companies, to even families. Now, the next, of course, is based on self-interest, therefore shared interest. But shared interest is actually an agreement-oriented. It is not natural. Or in mathematics, it's called quotient. So that is another possibility of working and making and reducing risk. And symmetry of work at work, of course, is based on mathematical symmetry, which is actually the most powerful method if you can command symmetry. Cohomology is an extension to symmetry, which is basically applying to human action. And so if you read the symmetry at work, plus, for example, do it for Mises, human action, you combine, you practically get cohomology. Now, what usually people talk narrowly in this type of session is technology at work. We are talking about AI, we are talking about blockchain, we are talking about big data, but the truth is, what are the purposes? What are the values? What are the symmetry or the sciences and mathematics behind those so-called works? Now, technology at work must work. And what most people focus on the technology and forget that it has to work. So AI is just a method. It's not really a solution. Now, game theory at work, of course, is basically combining technology, symmetry, cohomology, shared value, and that's the most confusing thing. And that leads to John Nash having nervous breakdown because it's so confusing. But if you look at it, if you separate it clearly, then actually game theory is just human actions. It's actually relatively simple. It's driven mostly by self-interest. Now, of course, the recent phenomenon in one of the games is God raise money. And those people who can raise a lot of money, actually it doesn't matter whether the result is good or bad, and as long as you can pay yourself a lot, maybe it's actually a good future. So, but that is, of course, not bothering about what is the future, a contribution to humankind, or what is the purposes. Now, that would be raise money at work, and in fact, it's a common topic in town. Now, when we break down to day-to-day life, actually all mathematics breaks down to small S-curves. Now, you call it string theory, you call it whatever it is. Actually, they're all very small S-curve. The Fourier transform is actually very small S-curve. Now, but the good thing about S-curve is they can be added together. When you add it together, it forms a block that you can actually understand. For example, supply side, fund side, demand side. And it's important to block them so that you don't mix up the demand side with supply side or mix up demand side with fund side. Now today, what we have done for 5,000 years is building up the supply side. And for 5,000 years, we focus on supply side. But for this 100 years, we are moving on to demand side and the fund side. And fund side, like I said, money concept is changing. Because of widening of the risk and opportunity, interest alone is not good enough. So therefore, the concept has to be fund-based. Now, and that focusing of block of ideas definitely simplify and allow you to focus, and that reducing the risk. So don't just look at AI, big data, or blockchain without a purpose or without what it can contribute to society or to companies. Now, this is the structure of Silverlake that addresses all the demand side, supply side, fund side of the stories which I built last 31 years. I show this chart is to show that whatever I preach is actually whatever I do. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you indeed, Mr. Goh Peng Hui, for that very exhaustive and very philosophical lectures on the opportunities and risks of digitalization. And look before your leap, as Mr. Goh advised all of us. Next, we will have Dato Henry Goh, who is the co-founder and chief operating officer of MACROKIOSK, which he founded with his brothers 2 decades ago during a time when mobile phones were still a novelty. So yeah, let's have Dato Henry Goh share his thoughts.
Yeah, very good afternoon, everybody. A very good afternoon, Doctor. Good to see you again. And of course, my fellow panelists, some of them are very familiar faces. Thank you very much. Yeah, I think, like what Mr. Goh was talking about, he's talking about supply and demand. I think this is something that has changed over time, especially with the onslaught of COVID-19. It has driven very much from supply-driven economy to a very much a demand-driven economy per se. If you look at it in the sense that digitalization obviously is a new word that people coin out, but then it's actually something that has happened many decades ago, I would say. It started off with computerization, then internetization, then you have globalization, and of course now they call it digitalization. But actually the key point is that things like computerization, internetization, or mobilization in that sense, is very much a supply-driven economy. So we are trying to tell people how good is it, how good is it, how good is it. But I think then it moves on to now, especially from year probably 2015 onwards, or now 2020 onwards, it has driven very much to become a demand-driven economy, in the sense that then now people who say, I want this, I want that, I want to do this digitally, I want to do this on my phone, I want to do this on my computer. So in the sense that, that shift has happened. But however, this shift is good in the sense that, there are abundance opportunity in terms of digitalization, meaning that people's lives are now so embraced with technology, and they are not afraid about using technology, and they try to have that as being part of their community or their life itself. So it gives companies like a digital company like say Silverlake or ourselves, MACROKIOSK, we have the opportunity to then say, okay, we can supply this for you, right? However, of course, another part of it is also in the sense that, to substantiate this demand, really, in the sense that it's not just about us as technology company talking about it, but rather also in the sense that the reports that we see from things like Beng and company, we have reports coming on from people like Temasek and Google and Facebook. Just for Southeast Asia itself, for the past year, we have added about 70 million new internet users, and they're coming on board at such quick rates. And at this point in time, there's an expectation that by end of this year, which is just another few months away, we're going to have something like 7 to 8 of every Southeast Asian would be online, and they will be exposed to some form of digitalization. However, the point is that what it means here is that we have a market that's huge enough for companies to sell the products to. However, how are you going to sell this product? So it's not about just embracing technology and use it, but then really you got to then see how this technology can help you. I mean, there are a lot of companies trying to say, I'm going onto blockchain, I'm going to AI, I'm going to machine learning and stuff like that. But a lot of times we see that the mismatch comes in a form, but then say, hey, how is this going to benefit you, right? How is it going to benefit your business, right? I mean, so I think one part that technology companies or even companies that want to go digitalization, how technology is being utilized to benefit their business is very, very important. I think this is something that needs to be very focused on. I think so. The risk part, in the sense that there are a lot of companies trying to go digitalization, but they went through the wrong way. It's just like, I want blockchain, so I just do blockchain, but generally it might not really be helpful to the business. So I think now, instead of trying to sell a lot of ideas of AI and blockchain and things like that, but then really should be very focused much in terms of then saying, how can we go to these companies, or how these companies should embrace to say how useful technology can be for them and their businesses. And having 7 to 8 of every Southeast Asian online, I think there's no doubt that companies have to embrace some form of digitalization or online presence to try to penetrate to this crowd of people, and to try to then how to sell your products to them, because they are not worried about buying something online anymore, and even they have their credit cards online and stuff like that anymore. So I think that's very important to it. So I would think, I mean, generally I would say that if you ask me, digitalization has come a long way. It's come to a point where if from a very supply driven to now very demand driven in terms of technology. So in that sense, it gives us a big opportunity. And due to things like COVID, people have been now fully embracing. So we have the majority or almost everyone in this region embracing technology, and this is an opportunity for us. The risk, of course, as I say, is then come to a point where people or companies are embracing the wrong part of technology. Of course, there are also other risks, like, especially when you have technology and when you have things like economies are getting poorer, some people are getting poorer, they'll be open to things like scams and things like that. It will happen. But generally, I think also that's another part of the risk of digitalization. But however, of course, it's just like in any businesses along the way, these risks are always being there, even whether you are digitalized or not. It's just that then these are new risks that we need to embrace in itself. So yeah, so I think for digital economy is a way forward. There's a lot of opportunity, and it's growing, and it's continue to grow. And I think that make sure that whatever or whoever company that want to embrace this, make sure they understand their digital roadmap properly and put in place the correct technology. So that's already what I share today. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Dr. Henry Goh. From supply-driven to demand-driven, and the fact that 7 out of 8 Southeast Asians are nowadays online. So a huge opportunity for marketing online, for example. Our next speaker, before I introduce him, please raise your questions. I think there's a Q&A button at the bottom. Please write your questions there for any of our speakers, and I will try my best to raise all of your questions to them. You could direct your questions specifically or in general. Thank you. Please do ask questions because we do have a Q&A at the end. Our next speaker is Mr. Matthew Chen, who is the Chief Executive Officer of Sunline Holding. Mr. Matthew Chen has a long experience of more than 20 years in banking and finance, specializing in treasury, in risk management, and so on. I think the term risk has come up quite a few times during today's session. So we are all looking forward to hearing from Mr. Matthew Chen, please.
Yeah, very good afternoon to everyone. First of all, a big thanks to KSI for inviting me to this stage, and thanks Dr. Michael again. Yeah, so we are talking about technologies, right? So before I start, for those of you probably do not know much about Sunline, who we are, what we do. Sunline is actually the largest core banking vendor in China. So we are headquartered in Shenzhen, China. Currently, we're serving more than 700 banks in China. And in the past decade, we managed to help about 100 banks to transform digitally, right? So about 5 years ago, we actually stepped outside of China, and our first stop was actually Kuala Lumpur, right? So I'm actually based in Kuala Lumpur. So we developed our regional hub in Kuala Lumpur in Malaysia. So the majority of our international staff have been recruited in KL, right, mainly. But of course, we are scattered all around Southeast Asia now in 7 countries, including some of the neighboring countries, Thailand, Indonesia, Vietnam, Philippines, Singapore, right? But our majority of our staff, including myself, are all based in Kuala Lumpur. So very honored to be here. So we are talking about technology, right? So I like to talk about banking because my profile probably is a bit out of date. Actually, my work experience has been 30 years already. Although I might not look it, I'm 52 years old already. So I had about 30 years experience working for and also with banks, right? So I'm going to talk about banking because banks will play a very instrumental role in the digitalization of the economy, right? In any economy. So obviously we're talking about technology, a lot of people talking about, AI, blockchain, cloud computing, and big data, right? So these buzzwords flying around in almost every single seminars, right? But how are we actually going to apply, these ABCD technologies in industries such as banking, right? So today, I'm going to give you some real examples, some of the experience that we had with deploying these ABCD technologies, right? So you mentioned I have a lot of experience in the banking, especially to do with risk management. So the first example I'm going to use is actually using AI on risk management, right? So because what is AI, right? In a very layman term, artificial intelligence is really trying to make sense of all of the unstructured data, because as everyone knows that the bank's financial data are very structured, right? But these days, more and more people's lifestyles is turning to digital. So a lot of people leave digital footprints everywhere in the 360 of their lifestyle, right? So AI is really artificial intelligence toolkit to be able to make sense of a picture, right? So for example, using OCR technology to make sense of a picture. And also, in a bank, every bank has a call center. So there's a lot of voice recording, right, which is also unstructured data. So again, you can utilize artificial intelligence toolkit to make sense of that data, right? So the list goes on. So the example I would like to give you is we actually developed a so-called alternative credit risk scoring about 5 years ago for one of the largest national banks in China. It's called Ping Bank, right? Because Ping Bank has branches all over China, right? So one of very important piece of external data that they like to automate is actually litigation data. Because about 7 years ago, the High Court in China passed a mandate. So any corporation, doesn't matter large or small, the minute it gets sued by another company, that data is actually going to be published by the official website of the whatever that court is that you're being sued at, right? So in China, there's about 5,400 courts in China, different level, right, from the state level all the way down to the county level. So if we're talking about official website, we're potentially talking about over 20,000 URLs, right? So it's humanly impossible for it's a very labor-intensive work if for a national bank such as Ping An Bank to search that all the corporate customer they have. For example, they have a loan to, they have lend to, right? They have a loan with. To see whether they get sued by who, right? So this AI is coming very handy, right? So we can utilize technology called the natural language processing, so that the full life cycle of a court case, it doesn't matter, picture or PDF file, whatever's published through the official court system website, all of this information can be made sense through AI, through NLP, right? Natural language processing toolkit, so that the financial relevant information will be extracted, so that alternative credit scoring model can be developed to complement with Ping An Bank's traditional credit risk model. Right? So this is really a very real life example of using AI and big data, because AI and big data always come hand in hand, to make sense of some of the external data, so that the single purpose is really to know your customer better, right? So the eKYC is really about knowing your customer better by utilizing, make sense some of the external data, right? So that's a very good example of using AI and big data in risk management. Of course, external data, AI, and big data technology can be also used in precision marketing, right? So there's a lot of other things can be utilized. So that's my first example about AI and big data. Blockchain, right? So blockchain is actually widely used in another banking scenario, such as trade finance, supply chain finance. Because in the supply chain finance, because the beauty of blockchain technology is all about using a distributed ledger to solve the issue about trust, right? So you can assume people are all bad. You don't trust each other, because there are a lot of, the danger of documentation is, documentation can be made fake, right? In China. So using blockchain technology, you can actually do away with the trust issue. So all the documentation that in a typical supply chain, is about 1+N, right? So knowing the core company that you deal with, and understanding all the upstream and downstream that the suppliers and customers that deal with these core companies, right? So a lot of documentation can be made sense by using a technology such as blockchain, right? Cloud computing, right? So these days people talking about infrastructure as a service, right? So you don't need to invest in a very expensive IBM infra, right? So a lot of banks in China actually are already using some sort of cloud computing technology, right? So for example, we have launched our open banking platform together with Tencent in a WeChat in China, right? WeChat obviously is the largest social media ecosystem in China, commands 1.4 billion customer active users, right? So the platform is really connecting the banks to the end consumer. So I call it a B2B2C model. So we establish an open banking platform in the middle. So utilize all the beautiful technology, cloud computing technology made available by Tencent Cloud. So again, a lot of banks, especially the little banks, they don't have to invest a lot of money, especially for the little ones, they don't have the right budget, expertise, and the manpower like the big banks, right? Nevertheless, they still want to go digital. So we are trying to give them the same level playing field by establish open banking platform in the cloud. So utilize the cloud computing technology, and to connect these little banks with a lot of fintech companies, right? So give them the same level playing field as a big bank will command, right? Maybe that I'll stop here because I think my 8 minutes is up. So hopefully there are some, these are some real life example of utilizing technology such as ABCD in a very instrumental industry such as banking, right? So I'll stop here.
Thank you, Mr. Matthew Chen, for giving us a lot of examples, artificial intelligence in risk management, blockchain in trade finance, and enabling small banks with cloud computing and so on. So we have a glimpse of how all these technologies could indeed enhance at least the financial side of the digital economy. Ladies and gentlemen, if you have questions, once again, please click on the Q&A button at the bottom and write them down, and I will direct them to our various speakers. Now, our next speaker would be Mr. Andrew Tan, who is the Chief Executive Officer of KipleX. And KipleX is the venture builder arm at Green Packet Berhad. And they are involved in early stage startups, and they also build new ventures. And before joining Green Packet, Andrew was with McKinsey. So Andrew Tan, please.
Hey, good afternoon, everyone. I just have a few kind of slides to share, so I can share it on my end, or maybe you guys can share it. Okay, so when we think about kind of digital economy in Asia, and when we think about kind of trends and opportunity and risk, I think what's actually really important is to think about the people, right? To put the people in the middle of, right? Because bits, bytes, and technology is important, but I would argue what's actually more important is the people, right? Because the success of Asia's digital economy hinges on empowering its people. So if you put that kind of framing in mind, then you can kind of think it in three buckets or three kind of pillars, right? The first is innovation must kind of progress human society, right? Must facilitate humanity's development, right? So that's the first one. The second one is all innovation needs to be contextualized to where you are. And we know Asia is so diverse, right? Every city is different, every country is different. So whatever innovation or digital solution that you build needs to be contextualized to the situation, to the country, to the geography, to the culture. And I think the last kind of pillar or bucket is to think about how can you enable the local ecosystem to actually provide the solution, because they are the best people that understand the on-ground situation, right, for digital innovation to take off. Now, if you just look at the first portion, which is kind of innovation meeting people's need. Can you go next slide, please? There's two components, right? When you think about meeting kind of needs of people, right? One is kind of leveraging on existing technology, right? Actually, I was just reading this recently for this conference, and I didn't know actually QR code was invented about 30 years ago, and it was used to track kind of Toyota's vehicles and parts, right? But over the last 2 years, with MySejahtera, at least in Malaysia, it used to track people, right? So it's kind of leveraging kind of not new technology, but leveraging kind of existing technology to kind of fulfill current needs, right? So that's one part of it, right? I think the second part, if you go next slide, please. So I think just leveraging just current technology is not enough. You also have to look at forward technologies, right? Look at new frontiers, right? So I'm not sure how many of you kind of stayed up to watch kind of Blue Origin's or Virgin Galactic's maiden voyage to space. So I stayed up, and it's very exciting. And actually, I think it's a win for us all, right? I know some might think it's a waste of resources to put 2 billionaires in space, or even think about, kind of space travel is only for the rich. I think to a certain extent that's true. But if you kind of think a little bit longer term, I think the technologies that come out from this kind of space industry is going to benefit humanity, right? So we've seen in the past, right? When we were first kind of aiming for the moon and for space, some of the technologies that came out of that that ecosystem kind of benefit us now, right? Whether it's in the car crash system, whether it's in pacemakers, or whether it's just kind of providing clean water to at-risk communities, right? So that's about innovation, right? We need to meet the human needs, and sometimes we can leverage on existing technology, but oftentimes we also have to progress for new technologies, right? So that's first. Can you go next slide, please? The second one is this digital solutions or digital innovation needs to really be contextualized to where we are in Asia. And I don't think any one of us, I don't think it's new, right? I think everyone of us know that Asia is so diverse, right? But let me just kind of zoom in the three areas, right? So one is social economic divide, right? And all of us know this is true, right? But it's kind of amazing stats to me, right? 18% of households in lower middle income economies in Asia have a computer. That's one computer, right? So for the last 2 years, I've been working at home. My kids have been doing remote learning. But if you don't have a computer, you cannot participate in this last 2 years, right? So that means like more than 80% of households in lower middle income cannot participate in this. So that's huge, right? And even going forward, right? There's still some stats that says 12% of Asia Pacific will still only be on 2G and 3G. And we're not talking about 5G or it's different thing, but there's so many, there's such a divide. And we have to keep that in mind when we think about kind of solutions or innovation or whatever in this space, right? The second one, I won't go too much in detail. Everyone knows that language culture differs not only for country to country, sometimes cities to cities, right? And then last one, also not new, right? Niche opportunities, right? And for me, it's just kind of doubling down and kind of refocusing. I keep on focusing on niche opportunities in Southeast Asia, at least, right? Where we know that a lot of businesses are SMEs. We know there's still a huge population that's unbanked or even underserved by banks, right? So there's just three areas, right? We need to contextualize kind of the innovation or the solution or digital solutions to the social economic divide, the language culture, and also focus on niche opportunities, right? Next slide, please. And this was my last slide, right? So we talk about kind of solution meeting needs. We talk about solution needs to be contextualized to where you are. And last part is just the human element and dynamic to fulfill this, right? So from my individual and communities, how can we continue to broaden people's mindset to adopt digital faster? How can we look at new technologies for the new norm, which I believe will be more hybrid, and at least for the next few years. It will not be fully remote, it will not be fully physical, but hybrid. But how can we create more technologies that are more efficient for remote learning, for example, right? The next one is, how can we enable local ecosystem or local businesses to provide these new solutions, right? Especially, I'm talking about startups, right? How can we help them, right? And last but not least, of course, is around talent, right? How can we upskill current talent to meet current needs and also future needs, but also how can we kind of think of education for our children so that they meet the needs of the future, which is so uncertain now, as we all know, right? So just those three things, right? So one is kind of all digital innovation or solution needs to be based on human needs and human wants. It needs to be contextualized to Asia. And the best people actually to think about those new solutions, improve solutions are people who are already here. That's all. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Mr. Andrew Tan. The three pillars of enabling the digital economy, innovation, socio-economic consideration, and also the building up a local ecosystem. Now, ladies and gentlemen, please continue to raise your questions. I don't see any yet, because if you don't raise any, then I have to come up with the questions. So please help me out by clicking on the Q&A button at the bottom. Now, next we will have Professor Michael Song, who is a technology venture builder and investor. He is the founding co-director of the Fintech Research Center at the Fanhai International School of Finance at Fudan University. So let's give the floor to Professor Michael Song.
Yes, thank you very much. It's a pleasure and honor to be here at KSI's annual forum. So today I've been asked to talk about the impact of digitization. So I really want to scope out and really talk about a very macro technological trend that's basically hitting an inflection point here in 2021, right? And that is the second digital revolution. 20 years ago, we had one digital revolution, that was the internet, where we took a lot of offline information and we digitized that. And that has become now 40% of the GDP of large countries like the US or China, right, from zero. So that was a very, very massively transformational thing where we made information free, we made it global, we made it readily available. We made the cost of acquisition to zero, and on top of that, all these new internet models, such as e-commerce and the Facebooks and Amazons of the world, has really changed the world. Right now, we are at the cusp of a new digital revolution. This one, not of information, the digitization of information, but now the digitization of value. Right, so any and all asset classes will now be digitized over the next say a couple of decades. Right, we're talking about real estate, fine arts, commodities like gold and oil and diamonds, and even stocks and bonds, and even abstract notions about a person or organization's future net worth. Right, can all now be encapsulated in what we call a digital asset. Right, we can take any and all assets and stick it into a legal trust, a legal structure that can hold these assets, and have this trust actually attached to a actual digital asset, and that asset now has the ability to be fungible or tradable across different ecosystems. So and everything can be done, in fact, with a smart wallet, a digital wallet, instead of being locked in or siloed into the various IT platforms that currently exist, right? So that is massively transformation. You think about the digitization of value and the ability to transfer that value, that's very fundamental. It's what we call a general purpose technology that will transform any and all industries, right? Just like the internet, it didn't matter if you were a bakery or gave dance studio lessons, right? You can still use the internet for e-commerce. Likewise, the new digitization of value will provide new ways of encapsulating the value, having you to find investors or find people who want to buy your product, and that's going to provide what we call liquidity in economic sense, right? Asset classes can now be financialized the same way that the stock market or bond market or capital markets that exist. Now imagine having a digital secondary market for any asset class, for real estate, for fine wine, for art, for commodities. And basically, we are now hitting this inflection point where that's becoming a major reality. Everybody has heard of blockchain technology and Bitcoin, perhaps, from 10 years ago. Bitcoin being the first example of the use of blockchain technology. You can think of blockchain as next generation internet, right? Basically, where the ledger of information of transfers and things like that are now in essentially a public cloud, which is transparent to everybody. And so basically, it's a very effective mechanism to do data sharing or the exchange of digital assets in a trusted way, and allow for what we call multi-party coordination, right? Any task, such as in trade finance, supply chain, the clearing and settlement of stocks, right, where you have multiple parties that need to get access to information. And right now, that information is being message passed through essentially email, in a very serialized way. Now we can do it in a parallel way. We can have a lot of coordination and sophistication among the people who are actually doing stuff. So basically, blockchain is being adopted massively as we speak. The technology has taken upwards of 10 years to become enterprise grade, right? This is just like the original internet, right? In fact, there's a lot of lessons that we learned from the original internet. History tends to repeat itself, or at least rhyme, right? 20 years ago, we had baud rates for computers going on the internet being very slow, unreliable. But because these technologies tend to double in performance or halve in cost, we call those exponentially progressing technologies. After a handful of years, they become something that's practical. So when baud rates became such that somebody could load a website in 30 seconds instead of 10 minutes, that changed the whole e-commerce landscape and enabled those type of application use cases. Okay, same thing with a blockchain. A blockchain implemented in the Bitcoin protocol, as the first example, has a TPS or transaction per second rate of 10 TPS. Right, Ethereum had 100, but now we are 10 years in, we are now in the 6th, 7th generation blockchains, and the TPS rates are 50,000 to 100,000. Okay, as a reference case, Visa network okay, for all global retail payment transactions is roughly about 50,000. So we are now at a stage where the technology is maturing. Also, the regulatory environment's maturing in all the most economically important locations in the world. Financial ecosystems like Switzerland, like Singapore, like Hong Kong, in China, in the US, in Germany, the regulatory environment for digital assets is set. Okay, the rules, right, of how they're classified. Are they a commodity? Are they securities? Or is it considered money? And also, things like tax and the legal status are all set. Okay, and what that means is that you can have massive institutional adoption. And in 2021, that's what you're seeing. Okay, now endowment funds, pension funds, insurance companies, central banks, they're all getting exposure to digital assets. Even JP Morgan will say to their clients these days, you should allocate at least 5% of your portfolio into digital assets. Okay, so the world has indeed changed from a few years ago, just when Jamie Dimon would say that Bitcoin was a scam, that kind of thing. Now the world has changed, and indeed you see massive institutional adoption of digital assets. The UN has a report saying that there's going to be 24 trillion US dollars worth of digital assets regulated, okay, by 2027, right? That's to give that context, the broader money supply of the world is $96 trillion. So 1/4 of the global broader money supply is going to flip into digital assets within the next half decade of change. Okay, so this is being adopted by everyone, notably by central banks. 86% of central banks, according to the BIS, Bank of International Settlement study, are now actively issuing their own digital currencies. Within 3 years, the BIS says that 1/5 of the world's population will be using the digital currencies of their home central banks and countries, right? Starting first, of course, notably with China, who's now on track to issue their digital RMB by within 6 months, okay, by the 22 Beijing Winter Olympics, okay, which is right around the corner, right? So, and just speaking of China, I think China really is going to lead the world in the blockchain infrastructure, which is the fundamental infrastructure of infrastructures, next generation internet that enables digital assets to be efficiently exchanged, to the digital RMB, which is going to be released as the first major economy to issue a digital currency. But then on top, all the financial institutions, including the banks, including the asset managers, are massively experimenting with digitizing assets. Okay, another way of saying this is securitization. It's a modern form of financial securitization, to take an asset and wrap it in this new modern form. And so I think this will be very, very interesting because, as you know, China is the largest trade partner for most of the world, right? And when China wants to then make that trade more efficient through the use of digital technologies like blockchain, and to be able to facilitate that maybe with the digital RMB, and then on top of that, put financial products, investment products on top, such as digital green bonds and things like this on top. This is going to be huge for everyone. And there's a huge opportunity for emerging economies in ASEAN, for example, to be able to leapfrog what has happened in the West, right? Much as, in the United States, I think, for example, things are much slower because they already have a functional payment ecosystem. They already have credit cards and things like that. So to transition into mobile payments, they're a little bit more slow to do that. Whereas in Asia, because of the pain points associated with lashing onto the formal international monetary system and digital payments and things like that, there's a huge opportunity to flip into this. Andrew just talked about how a good percentage, 96% of companies in ASEAN are SMEs, right? And there's also 1.6 billion people who don't have access to the bank accounts and things like that. If you give them a smartphone-enabled digital wallet, allow them to do cross-border payments, allow them to get SME financing loans, and allow them to invest into financial products that beat inflation, this is how you actually change the world, okay, for financial inclusion and things like that. So I think that this is just right around the corner. I believe that institutional adoption is happening massively. Within 3 years, you're going to start to see a digital euro, a digital dollar, and they're going to start to exchange with each other and not necessarily need Swift ecosystem. In fact, right? I use an analogy that's like using the U.S. Postal Service when everybody's on email, right? It's just decades old technology, and when you have the new thing that's much more efficient, a lower cost, etc. Everybody's going to move to that. So I think the world is transitioning very, very fast, and I would encourage everyone to look at this. It's almost like saying to everyone in 1999, you guys should look at this internet thing, right? It might be kind of important. The use cases, there's all sorts of innovation. We'll see what happens there. But fundamentally, it will be a massively transformative opportunity, both in terms of allowing people to do business, to be able to trade, to be able to invest, okay? And it's going to be massively fundamental. So I'll end there, and I hope everybody takes a look at this.
Thank you, Professor Michael Song, talking about the securitization of physical assets into a tradable digital assets and general purpose technology, capturing values, and various other transformative steps that are taking shape. I see two questions at the Q&A there, and please continue to raise your question. And the speakers, you might also look into the Q&A in anticipation of me asking you later, directing those questions to you later. Choose the kind of questions you would like to answer. Now, our next speaker would be my good friend, Professor Dr. Chin Yu Sin. I think Dr. Chin Yu Sin needs no long introduction. He is the chairman or director of a string of wonderful companies. And he has also many qualifications, which are simply too many to enumerate. So without further ado, I would like to invite my good friend, Dr. Chin Yu Sin. Is Dr. Chin Yu Sin with us? Or maybe you need to unmute yourself. Unmute yourself.
Okay. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, sorry. Thank you very much, Dr. O. He's my good friend. I know him, I think, since 2006. I still remember. First time I met him in Sapa. And good afternoon, good evening to all my panelists. I will touch, since everybody talking about technology, I will touch more on the economics effects of these digital technologies, the impact on this ASEAN. ASEAN actually is with a population of 630 million, and then about 50%, more than 50% of its population is less than 30 years old. So I think this shows that this digital technology has a great impact on this ASEAN economic as a whole. And if we look at the data, this ASEAN now is having a combined GDP of 2.25 trillion USD in the world. That is this ASEAN economic as a whole is the 6th largest economic in the world. I think with the wide utilization of these digital technologies, it can become the 5th largest economic in the world in a very short time. So I think these are ASEAN, actually they got a plan to in 2025, they want to sort of achieve quite a lot in this in the field of the digital economics. Talking about this ASEAN, we have to talk about Malaysia. Actually, Malaysia also, we are really sort of embarking on this digital technology since 1996 when we first have this multi-super corridor. That was, I think, 20 over years ago. So during that time, we attracted quite a lot of investment, especially towards the ICT company. These are information communication technology companies investing in this what I call this multi-super corridor in the cyber giant. So since then, we have really sort of never looked back, and then we keep on progressing. So actually, we have, according to our research, in next decade, this digital technology will have an impact of 26% on our economics growth. That's why you can see the importance of this digital technology, the impact on our economic growth. especially now with the COVID-19, since it started in late 2019 in China, later on in Malaysia also we have this COVID problem. I think in early 2020, this pandemic has really caused us a great economic loss, and this event in a way is a crisis to us, but to Chinese, crisis means during what I call bad situation or very challenging situation, we still there is an opportunity also. So I feel this pandemic has really helped Malaysia to embark on this digital technology even faster. If we go by normal rate, it would take about maybe another 5 to 10 years. Malaysia maybe can achieve this present status of using this digital technology. But because of this COVID-19, so Malaysian has no choice, have to embark on this on using more. That means they have to rely more on this digital technology to get their things done. First thing, because of there's a restriction on social distancing, so a lot of things we need to buy things through this online, like food, groceries, and many other things, like even traveling, or this a lot of things also have to done through internet. So in a way, this have really spurred the growth of this digital economic. So I feel that Malaysia will sort of achieve a faster economic growth by using more this digital technology, because in the first place it can sort of cut down the cost of doing business, and also you cut down the reliance on laborers. At the same time, also it become more efficient, because it's instantly the message can be instantly, or the goods can be sent to a person very fast, because through internet, we want to order anything, we just click on the internet, and then they get the things done very fast. In Malaysia now, we got the Lala Move. Lala Move is something like it's a dispatch company sending goods to you, or anything like groceries or food or even parcels they can send for you. I think this also, in a way, because of COVID-19, has created a lot of this sort of company using this sort of digital technologies. Like in this Indonesia, they have Gojek. Gojek is something like taxi. This what they're using motorcycle, something like Grab like that. They will send goods to any destinations they want. So I think this sort of pandemic has really changed the world. And then we need to look at how China make full use of this digital technology to achieve its economic growth. First thing, China's use what I call the infrastructure. I mean, they achieve prosperity through building infrastructure, especially routes, or this high-speed rail routes, seaport, airport, and all kind of infrastructure. Because Chinese always believe that you want to achieve prosperity, you need to put the infrastructure in place first. This is what I call the hardware structure. China at the same time also, they make full use of this software technology, something like this IT, what I call this digital technology, such as blockchain, 5G, artificial intelligence, all these things to spur the economic growth of China. So I think ASEAN, especially Malaysia, can learn a lot from this China, because all these technologies like drones, robots, all these are available already. We just buy from them. Then we can make full use of this technology to sort of achieve economic efficiency and achieve higher productivity for our country, so that we can achieve our become a more developed nation, or what we call the advanced nation in a shorter time. By right, we should achieve our visions of Wawasan 2020. I mean last year, but because of this, what I call during the last part of this the Wawasan 2020, the economic growth is not so what I call sustainable. That's why now we need to achieve by 2025. So I think with the widespread use of this IT, when this digital technology, especially we can buy a lot of this technology from China. Then at the same time, we can make full use of this technology. We don't need to develop and then we just buy it. So I think in this way we can cut down the economic what called the development of a country. So normally a country, when they go for industrialization, they need to go through the normal 4 stages. Is the first thing is like 4I, imitation. I mean, you copy the products from other people. And then second thing is improvement, like these Japanese used to say kaizen. Kaizen, that means you try to improve on the existing product. This was, I think this the technique is developed by Toyota or something like that. And the third one is called the innovation. Innovation is something like you improve on the certain features of the product so that it becomes something different from the original product. And of course, the best one is become invention. So invention, I think Malaysia is still lagging behind. But now with this what called advancement in China, especially China is very advanced in this artificial intelligence. So we can buy this technology from them so that we can cut short these 4 stages of development or industry development of a country, so that we can achieve economic efficiency and productivity faster. So I think in a way we can borrow or can this technology from China to sort of help not only Malaysia, ASEAN as a whole to become a more developed nation faster. So I think in this light, I think Malaysia, if we can sort of first thing cooperate with China for more to build more infrastructure, physical infrastructure, like more this airports, a better airport, better seaport, better high-speed railroad, better highways. In a way, this one, all this infrastructure can cut down the cost of doing business, or can become and make our economy more efficient, and can raise the productivity of our company in particular, and the what I call the productivity of a country in general. So I think this is a hardware kind of structure. Second thing, we need to cooperate with China and get more this digital technology and learn from them, or buy the existing technology from them. So with these two, hardware and software, the combination of these two, I think we can make our country can grow faster. And I think we can achieve our this advanced nation status even faster. By 2025, maybe you can cut short. I think 2025 maybe you cannot achieve, but I think they plan for 2030. But if we make full use of these two things, the Belt and Road Initiative, as well as these digital technologies can be made available by China. We just have to have a better relationship with China. So, and then we can sort of get these two things together. I think we can achieve this. Our country can become a really advanced nation, maybe an economic, what called the income of people about more than 10,000 USD per annum. I think we can achieve that. I think less than 2030. Maybe we can cut short at least 3 to 5 years. I mean, you go by normal rate, maybe you need to become a developed nation by the year of 2030. But if the government can implement the two suggestions just put forward, I think we can cut short the time for 3 to 5 years. This is my initial comment on this. How to make full use of this digital technology to make our ASEAN to grow faster in general, and Malaysia in particular. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, Professor Chin. Digitalization of in ASEAN and Malaysia, and how could work together with China. Now, there are 2 questions here. Now, the first question I'm going to direct to both Dato Henry Goh and Andrew Tan, because it's about less than 20% of Malaysian SMEs have digitalized. Should the other 80% join from the viewpoint of investment and profit? If yes, which aspect they should digitalize first? So maybe Dato Henry go first.
Yeah, thanks, Doctor. Yeah, I think
answers brief, because we have like 10 minutes on it. Okay.
Yeah, I think is that yes, definitely they should be going into digitalization. There's no doubt about it, especially with the current COVID situation. I think it's going to be it's going to be the future in terms of digitalization. But however, in terms of investment in digitalization, there are two parts to it. Of course, digitalize not just in selling more of your products, but also digitalize in terms of operating efficiency. So I think that itself, if you invest in both of these areas, you can drive more growth and also, of course, drive more profit through it, rather than just focusing on one part to that area.
Okay, thank you. Andrew?
Yeah, I think I don't think there's a choice, right?
Okay. Oh, your mic. Your mic.
Sorry. No, I don't think it's a choice here, right? I think it's just a must do, right? If you don't do as a business, you won't exist in the next few years. So I don't think it's a choice, right? And I think I agree with Dr. Henry, right? You need to look at both investment and profit at the same time, right? So nothing additional to add, but it's a must. It's almost like a natural law of existence. If you don't digitize, you won't exist.
Okay, thank you. Okay, now I have to come up with the questions. To my good friend, Mr. Peng, you give us a very philosophical and very profound lectures with all these bases and shared beliefs and purposes and values and even S-curves. Well, the point of interest would be, so if people would like to join the digital economy and so on, how much of this sort of philosophical grounding they will have to acquire before they could confidently march into the digitalization process?
Well, the symmetry is not philosophy. Symmetry is actually mathematics. And the corresponding to symmetry is called innateness. Innateness in layman term is common sense, which means from now on, moving to the demand side, moving to the fund side, yes, we have 300 years of economic studies. Yes, we have maybe 2,500 years of science and mathematics. But many things that were built in the past 100 years, no, until 1900, sorry, until 1900, like the Lord Kelvin actually said, nothing is going to be discovered anymore. It's all about details. That was exactly what Lord Kelvin said in 1900 when he was the chairman of academy. But it's not true. And so why it was not true is because it's just completely lack of common sense, right? So what I'm saying is symmetry, yes, you actually can read all the books, you actually can do a research, you can read mathematics. Well, of course, if you read mathematics and you really target in specific topics like chip design, specific like blockchain, specific like artificial intelligence, machine learning, specifics like voice recognitions, virtual reality, so on. Of course, those are definitely you have to put in a lot of effort. Each and individual areas, you have to put in a lot of effort. Now, if for whatever reason, like SMEs, where you can't really put in that much of effort, well, then there's still a way out. It's called common sense. And that also relates to the second question, about Evergrande. From common sense point of view, does it not make sense for China to do something better? In fact, forget about all the economic numbers and economic data, but if you look at recent China actions, if you look from common sense point of view, does it not make sense to try to be better, cleaner air, less wastages, more tighter financial discipline? These are all common sense. So actually you can come from common sense and maybe, consult people who understand symmetry, whether they are relevant or not relevant. And actually it can be that simple. Coming from common sense and ask anyone who commands symmetry and ask whether it's relevant or not relevant. In fact, that is how I run companies. Now, we started with, finally, 3 years ago, we have 130 companies. So the question is how you run 130 companies and how you merge back. And so today we have only 2 groups. So how we merge back is all common sense because people understand why you do it. Okay, if you explain, they understand why you actually bring it back from all suddenly become supply side and demand side and fund side. Okay, three groups: demand side, supply side, and fund side. And so by common sense, actually it can be understood.
Okay. Yeah, I'm still trying very hard to understand. Matthew, could you also give us some Southeast Asian examples of how they adopt AI, blockchain, cloud computing, and so on? Just one or two, so that our audience here could be encouraged as well.
I think in terms of South Asia, right? My short experience of the past 4 years in South Asia, truly the adoption of all of those ABCD technology I mentioned is probably a little bit lagging behind China, right? One of the most important reason, other than the infrastructure, the readiness and availability of infrastructure, one of most important element is actually missing. It's the availability of the data, right? So people might say there's no privacy in China, right? Therefore, every single piece of data is readily available. I mean, it's true or not true. I'm not debating, but definitely it is true that the example I gave before, the High Court passed the mandate, right? Almost 7 years ago, so that the litigation data of all the corporations, as long as they're being sued, is actually available, right? So it's legit and it's available. Malaysia, I think, is also trying to do something similar, but in a lot of countries, I see that the data aren't really available, right? So that's on the data side. Of course, on the infra side, in terms of the connectivity, so China's, putting a lot of money, pushing through the 5G connectivity, right? So it's a very important infra readiness, and also the blockchain technology also mentioned. So the government, it's a top-down approach, right? So the government's really putting a lot of emphasis and efforts and investment monies, and push all the companies, government enterprise into investing this technology, right? So from my experience in South Asia over the past 4 years, I don't see as a strong top-down approach as what I have seen in China. So maybe that is why it's lagging, because it is important, for any of this technology to be actually, pushing through the whole of the economy. You need both a bottom-up approach and a top-down approach, right? So bottom-up is all the companies. I think Andrew mentioned the SMEs, right? SME is definitely one of the key elements driving a sustainable economy in South Asia. But SMEs alone, doesn't matter how longer-sighted visions the leaders of these SMEs have. If you're lacking a top-down approach, it's going to be very, very difficult, right? So I think that's probably the key takeaway that I would like to share, right? So the governments of Malaysia and all of Southeast Asia maybe also need to look at a top-down approach, right? Echoing Dr. Ching's point, right? Some of the technology, I mean, you don't have to reinvent wheels, right? If you can buy, I'm not trying to promote my company here, but why not, right? Rather than reinvent the wheels. I mean, technology itself is so neutral, right? Technology is just a toolkit. There's no, good or evil about any technology. The key is actually data, right? As long as, from Malaysian point of view, as long as the data and privacy is protected, technology itself you can buy rather than build, right? And as long as people's privacy is protected, the data, especially sensitive data, do not leave Malaysia, right? That's doable, right? That you can have a frog leap, so that you can you can jump, like Dr. Ching said, you probably can cut down 3 to 5 years of your digitization of the whole economy, right? So I'll stop here.
Thank you very much. Unfortunately, that's all the time we have because we need to, usher in the next panel. But thank you very much for all 6 wonderful and distinguished speakers for sharing their valuable experience. I hope in future I will be able to work with all of you again. And I would also like to thank KSI and the other organizers who organized this panel to bring us together. Thank you very much. See you.
Thank you.